My name is Marcus Chen, and I've been driving long-haul routes for 19 years. The divorce left me with nothing but a "so ate Kenworth" and a habit of talking to myself on empty highways. I tell you this so you understand. I'm not the kind of guy who spooks easy. I've seen plenty. Accidents that painted the asphalt red, drivers who fell asleep and never woke up, storms that turned the world into a gray hell. But what happened on I-40 through the Ozarks changed something fundamental in me. It was October 17, 2019. I remember because it was my daughter's birthday, and I'd missed it for the third year running. The guilt sat heavy in my gut as I pushed through Arkansas around 2:47 a.m., hauling medical equipment to Little Rock. The highway was mine alone, no taillights ahead, no headlights behind, just that hypnotic yellow line disappearing into fog that rolled across the blacktop like something alive. The radio had gone to static an hour back, just that hiss and crackle that sounds almost like whispering if you listen long enough. The pine trees on both sides created walls of darkness, and my high beams barely cut through the mist. The air coming through my cracked window smelled of wet leaves and something else, something faintly sweet, like flowers left too long in a vase. That's when I saw him. He stood at the shoulder near mile marker 247, thumb out, wearing what looked like a military jacket despite the warmth of the night. His face was pale in my headlights, but I couldn't make out details through the fog. I hadn't seen another vehicle in 40 minutes, and the nearest town was 30 miles back. I'm not supposed to pick up hitchers. Company policy. But something made me hit the brakes. Maybe guilt over missing my kid's birthday. Maybe just loneliness. The air brakes hissed as I pulled over, the whole rig shuddering to a stop. He approached the passenger side, and I got my first clear look at him through the window. Mid-20s, dark hair plastered to his forehead like he'd been walking in rain, though it wasn't raining. His eyes caught my dome light strangely, reflecting it back like an animal's. "Appreciate it," he said, his voice muffled through the glass. "Been walking for hours." I unlocked the door. He climbed in with a grace that seemed wrong somehow, too fluid, too practiced. The cabin filled with that sweet rot smell I'd noticed before, stronger now. He wore combat boots caked with red mud and jeans torn at the knees. "Where you headed?" I asked, pulling back onto the highway. "Little Rock." His voice was flat, emotionless. "Got family there." We drove in silence for a few minutes. I tried the radio again, still static, but underneath it, I swear I heard music. Old music, like a big band from the 40s, wavering in and out. "You serve?" I asked, nodding at his jacket. He didn't answer right away. When I glanced over, he was staring straight ahead, his hands folded in his lap. They were covered in scratches, fresh ones that glistened in the dashboard light. "Yeah," he finally said. "Long time ago." Something about that answer didn't sit right. He looked too young. I decided to drop it. The fog got thicker. My wipers smeared it across the windshield without clearing anything. The yellow line disappeared, and I had to slow to 40 just to keep from drifting. That's when I noticed the temperature had dropped. I could see my breath even though the heat was cranked. "Cold in here," I said, more to break the silence than anything. "Is it?" He turned to look at me then, really look at me, and his eyes... Jesus, his eyes were completely black. Not just the pupils, but the whole thing, like someone had filled them with ink. I jerked the wheel, the rig swerving slightly. My heart hammered against my ribs. "You okay?" he asked, and his voice had changed. Deeper now, resonant, like it was coming from somewhere far away. "Fine," I managed. "Just tired." I reached for my thermos of coffee, needing something to do with my hands. When I looked back at the road, I saw them, figures standing along the shoulder. Dozens of them, maybe more, all facing the highway. They wore the same military jackets, the same torn jeans. As we passed, their heads turned in perfect unison to follow us. "Friends of yours?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled then. At least, I think it was a smile. His mouth opened too wide, showing too many teeth. "You could say that." The CB radio crackled to life, even though it had been off. A woman's voice, distant and broken. "Anyone on this channel? Please, accident at mile marker 247. Need help. Can anyone hear me? Mile marker 247. That's where I'd picked him up. "That's strange," I said, reaching to respond. His hand shot out and gripped my wrist. His fingers were ice cold and impossibly strong. "Don't," he said. The radio continued. "So much blood. He's not moving. Oh God, he's not breathing. Someone please." I pulled my hand back and he let me. My skin where he'd touched felt numb, like frostbite setting in. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded. "Keep driving," he said. "We're almost there." But we weren't almost anywhere. The mile markers had stopped, the trees had stopped. The fog was so thick now that I couldn't see past the hood of my truck. It felt like we were suspended in nothing, driving through a gray void. I thought about my daughter, about how I'd promised to call her on her birthday, and hadn't, about how my last words to my ex-wife had been angry ones, about all the things left unsaid. "I died here," he said quietly. 19 years ago tonight. Pickup truck crossed the center line. Killed me instantly, but I kept walking, kept trying to get home. 19 years, the same amount of time I'd been driving this route. Every year, on this night, I wait, and every year, someone stops. Someone always stops. The void began to clear. I saw lights ahead, red and blue, flashing in sequence. An accident scene materialized around us, but it was wrong. The vehicles were old, from the 70s maybe. A pickup truck was crumpled against a tree, its front end accordioned. Paramedics in outdated uniforms worked around a shape on the ground covered by a yellow tarp. And standing among them, watching it all, were dozens of the figures I'd seen on the road. They stood perfectly still, their black eyes fixed on the scene of their deaths. "This is where I get off," my passenger said. I looked over, and he was already opening the door. The truck was still moving, but he stepped out anyway, landing on the fog-covered asphalt without stumbling. He turned back to face me one last time. "Thank you for stopping," he said. "It gets lonely out here." Then he walked toward the other figures, joining their silent vigil, and the scene began to fade. The fog closed in again, and when it cleared, I was alone on an empty highway. The radio was playing normal country music. The temperature had returned to normal. My thermos was still in the cup holder, untouched. I checked my phone. 14 missed calls from my daughter, 3 voicemails. I pulled over on the shoulder, not near mile marker 247, I made sure of that, and called her back. "Dad?" She sounded worried. "Where have you been? I've been calling for hours." "I know, baby. I'm sorry. I got detained." We talked for an hour. I told her I loved her. I told her about all the birthdays I'd missed and why I'd been running from everything. She cried. I cried. And when we hung up, I looked at the passenger seat. There was a patch of red mud on the floor mat, fresh mud, and the seat was still cold to the touch. I got back on the road, but I took a different route to Little Rock, a longer one, farther south. I've been driving long haul for 19 years, but I've never gone past mile marker 247 on I-40 again, and I don't pick up hitchhikers anymore. Not ever. Because sometimes the people asking for a ride aren't trying to get somewhere, they're trying to take you with them. If you're new here, subscribe to Untold Fears for nightly stories that make you question every sound on the road. But just 20 miles north, a state trooper encountered something that made my story seem tame. Story 2. Cop pulled over a ghost car. I'm Officer Sarah Mitchell, Highway Patrol for the state of Wyoming for 12 years. I've worked the night shift by choice. Fewer supervisors, more autonomy. And honestly, after my partner got shot during a routine traffic stop in Cheyenne, I preferred being alone. The solitude felt safer than depending on someone else to watch my back. The incident that ended my career happened on Highway 287, about 40 miles south of Laramie. It was November 3rd, 2021. I remember because it was 3 days after my 37th birthday, and I'd spent it alone in my apartment with a bottle of bourbon and my service weapon on the coffee table, thinking about my partner and how close I'd come to following him. But I'd reported for duty that night, like always. 200 hours, clear skies, temperature hovering just above freezing. The kind of night where your breath crystallizes instantly and the stars look close enough to touch. I was parked at my usual spot near mile marker 185, radar gun running, watching the occasional semi roll past. Dispatch had been quiet for 2 hours. Janet's voice on the radio was the only human contact I'd had since shift started. Unit 47, this is dispatch. We've got a report of a possible drunk driver, northbound 287, described as a silver sedan, last seen near Bossler. Can you respond? I keyed my radio. Copy that. Dispatch. Unit 47 responding. I pulled onto the highway, heading north. The landscape out here is desolate. Rolling hills covered in scrub, no towns for miles, just darkness punctuated by reflective mile markers. My headlights carved a tunnel through the night, and the yellow line was my only companion. I found the vehicle at mile marker 197, moving slowly in the right lane. Silver sedan, just like dispatch said. Wyoming plates, no erratic movement, no crossing the center line. But something felt wrong immediately. The car's brake lights didn't work right. They'd flicker on and off in no pattern, like a loose connection. And the rear window, I couldn't see through it. It wasn't tinted. It was just empty, like looking into deep water. I hit my lights and siren. The car didn't respond, just kept moving at exactly 45 miles per hour, steady as a metronome. Unit 47 to dispatch, I've got the vehicle in sight, attempting to initiate traffic stop. Copy 47, use caution. I pulled closer, my spotlight illuminating the license plate. But when I called it in, Janet's voice came back confused. Unit 47, that plate comes back to a 1987 Honda Accord, silver, registered to a Martin Hendricks. But 47, that vehicle was reported destroyed in a fatal accident in 2003. My stomach tightened. Say again, dispatch? The vehicle you're following shouldn't exist. It was totaled 18 years ago. I looked at the car ahead of me, still moving, still steady. The brake lights flickering like Morse code. I keyed the radio again. Dispatch, I'm looking right at it. 47. Maybe it's a different car with the same... Static cut her off. The radio hissed and popped, and underneath it, I heard something else. Music. Big band music, the same kind I'd heard stories about from the truckers who worked this route. And underneath that, a voice. A man's voice, calm and distant. Shouldn't have stopped. Shouldn't have looked. It sees you now. The silver sedan suddenly accelerated. I hit my gas pedal, keeping pace. We were doing 70 now, 80, 90. The landscape blurred past. The mile markers came. Faster and faster. And then I saw the driver. He sat perfectly straight, both hands on the wheel at 10 and 2. He wore a suit from another era, narrow lapels, thin tie. His head was tilted slightly, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. And when he turned to look at me in his side mirror, I saw that his face was wrong. It wasn't that he looked dead or decayed. It was worse. His features kept shifting, like looking at someone through water, never quite settling into a recognizable shape. And his eyes, when they locked onto mine through the mirror, they were hollow. Not empty. Hollow. Like something had scooped out everything human and left just the shell. The temperature in my cruiser dropped instantly. My breath came out in white plumes. Frost began spreading across my windshield from the inside, creating intricate patterns that looked almost intentional, like writing in a language I couldn't read. The radio crackled again. This time, it was a different voice. A woman's voice, screaming, "Help us! Please! It won't let us go. It keeps driving. Oh God, it keeps." The transmission cut to static. The sedan began to slow, not gradually, but suddenly, like someone had cut the engine. It drifted to the shoulder, coming to a stop in a cloud of gravel dust. I pulled in behind it, my hand on my service weapon, every instinct screaming at me to drive away. But I'm a cop, was a cop, and cops don't run. I called it in. "Dispatch, vehicle stopped, mile marker." I looked at the nearest marker. It read 247, but we'd been at 197 just minutes ago. "Dispatch, there's something wrong with my GPS. Can you confirm my location?" No response, just static. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out of the cruiser. The cold hit me like a physical force. This wasn't November cold. This was something deeper, something that came from the earth itself. The air smelled wrong too, like ozone and copper, and that same sweet rot smell from flowers left too long in a vase. I approached the driver's side window, flashlight up, right hand on my holster. "Driver, turn off your engine and keep your hands where I can see them." The engine was already off. I could hear it ticking as it cooled. But the man inside didn't move. He sat perfectly still, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. I tapped on the window with my flashlight. "Sir, I need you to roll down your window." Nothing. I tried the door handle. It was unlocked. The door swung open with a creak that sounded like it hadn't moved in decades. The smell that rolled out made me gag. Death. Old death. The kind that comes after something's been rotting for weeks. But the man looked fresh, normal except for those shifting features, those hollow eyes. "Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle." He turned to face me then, slowly, like his neck had rusted. And when he spoke, his voice came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing in the empty night. "Officer Mitchell," he said, and he shouldn't have known my name. "Why did you stop me?" "You were reported as a possible drunk driver," I said, hand tight on my weapon now. "I need you to step out of the vehicle and perform a field sobriety test." He smiled. At least, I think it was a smile. His mouth opened, revealing teeth that were too white, too perfect, too many. "I can't step out," he said. "If I step out, the driving stops. And if the driving stops—" He gestured to the back seat. I played my flashlight across it. There were people back there, 3 of them. A woman in a flower print dress from the 60s, a teenage boy in a Letterman jacket, an elderly man in work clothes. They sat perfectly still, perfectly silent, their eyes as hollow as the driver's. "They've been with me a long time," the driver said. "Passengers. They got in, and now they can't get out. The road won't let them. I won't let them." "Who are you?" I demanded. "I'm Martin Hendricks. I died in 1987 when I wrapped this car around a telephone pole going 90. Killed instantly. But something went wrong. I didn't move on. The car didn't stop. We just kept driving. And over the years, others have joined us. People who look too long. People who follow too close." He turned back to face the windshield. "People like you." The door to his car suddenly slammed shut. My cruiser's engine roared to life behind me. The headlights switched on, high beams in my eyes, blinding me. I ran. I don't care if that makes me a coward. I ran back to my vehicle, yanked the door open, and threw myself inside. The engine was already running, the transmission in drive. My foot wasn't on the pedal, but the car started moving. "No, no, no," I whispered, grabbing the wheel, trying to brake. Nothing happened. The pedal went to the floor with no resistance. In my rearview mirror, the silver sedan pulled onto the highway behind me, and in my back seat, they were there. The woman in the flower print dress, the teenage boy, the elderly man, all staring at me with those hollow eyes. "You look too long," the woman whispered. I screamed. I jerked the wheel hard right, sending the cruiser off the highway. We hit the shoulder at 70 miles per hour, then the ditch, and the world turned into a chaos of metal and breaking glass, and that smell, that awful death smell, filling my lungs. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. 14 broken bones, punctured lung, severe concussion. My cruiser had been found at the bottom of a ravine, wrapped around a tree. The dash cam footage showed me driving straight off the road for no apparent reason. There was no silver sedan in the video, no passengers in my back seat. But I know what I saw. I know what happened. They let me retire on medical disability. PTSD, they said. Hallucinations brought on by stress and isolation. Maybe they're right. Maybe I imagined it all. But sometimes, late at night, I see headlights in my apartment window, silver sedan headlights, and I hear the radio static, and underneath it, that big band music, and underneath that, the voices of people who looked too long and couldn't look away. I don't drive at night anymore. I don't drive Highway 287 ever again, and if you do, if you see a silver sedan with flickering brake lights and an empty rear window, don't follow it, don't stop it, don't look in the back seat, because once you see them, they can see you too. Subscribe to Untold Fears if these stories keep you awake at night, because they're only going to get darker. 30 miles east, a tow truck driver met a woman who shouldn't have been there at all. Story 3. Woman waving for help then gone. My name's Jake Moreno, and I've been running Moreno's Towing out of Rapid City, South Dakota for 8 years. It's just me, a 2015 Ford F-550, and whatever poor bastard got themselves stranded on Highway 44. The work's steady, the pay's decent, and I don't have to talk to people more than necessary. After the way my marriage ended, my wife in bed with my business partner, the business we'd built together turned to ash in the divorce. Solitude started feeling like friendship. The night I'm about to tell you about was February 11th, 2020. Valentine's Day was coming, and the whole world seemed designed to remind me I'd be spending it alone for the first time in 12 years. The temperature had dropped to 8 below zero, and the wind cut through everything like broken glass. I got the call around 2:15 a.m. Dispatch, a kid named Tyler who worked the overnight, sounded half asleep. "Hey, Jake, got a pickup for you. Highway 44, about 6 miles east of Quinn. Woman called in, said her car died. She's waiting on the shoulder." "She okay?" I asked, already pulling on my heavy coat. She sounded, I don't know, man, weird, real quiet. Said she'd been waiting a long time. "I'm on it." I fired up the truck, the diesel engine coughing in the cold, and headed out. Highway 44. At that hour was a void, no streetlights, no houses, just darkness and snow that had been plowed into walls along the shoulder. The wind rocked my truck, sending up clouds of powder that caught in my headlights like static. The radio played classic rock, Lynyrd Skynyrd as I recall, and I had the heat cranked as high as it'd go. My coffee had already gone cold in the cup holder. The world outside was hostile and empty, and I felt like the last human alive. I found her at exactly 6 miles out, just like Tyler said. A Honda Civic, early 2000s model, white or maybe silver, hard to tell in the darkness, pulled onto the shoulder with its hazards blinking. The driver's door was open, and standing next to it, waving both arms above her head, was a woman in a red jacket. Relief flooded through me. Nothing worse than finding an empty car in this weather. People could freeze in 20 minutes if they weren't dressed right. I pulled in behind her, hit my flashers, and grabbed my clipboard. The cold hit me like a truck when I opened my door. 8 below feels like 20 below when the wind's moving. "Hey," I called out, walking toward her. "You call for a tow?" She stopped waving and turned to face me. She was young, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Pretty, even with her face red from the cold. But something about her expression made me slow down. She was smiling. Not a relieved smile or a grateful smile or even an embarrassed smile. Just smiling, like she'd been waiting for me specifically. "Thank you for coming," she said. Her voice was soft, almost drowned out by the wind. "I've been out here for so long." "How long?" I asked, looking at her car. "Engine trouble?" "I don't remember," she said. "I tried to call for help, but my phone died. And then it got so cold, so very cold." That's when I noticed she wasn't shivering. 8 below zero with a wind chill that could freeze skin in minutes, and she stood there perfectly still in just a light jacket. No gloves, no hat. Her cheeks weren't even red, except in spots that looked almost like makeup. "You okay, miss?" I asked. "You seem a little out of it. Maybe we should call an ambulance." "No ambulance," she said quickly, too quickly. "I just need a ride. Can you take me somewhere warm?" I hesitated. Something felt wrong. Her car door was open, but there was no dome light shining inside. Her hazards were blinking, but when I looked closer, there was no snow piled on her hood or windshield. Like the car had only been there for a few minutes, not the hours she claimed. "Let me check your vehicle first," I said, walking past her. "See if I can get it started. Save you a tow charge." "It won't start," she said. "I already tried everything." I looked in through the open door. The interior light was off. I reached in to turn the key. It was already in the ignition, and the car fired right up. Engine hummed like it had never been dead. I turned to tell her the good news. She was standing right behind me, inches away. I hadn't heard her move. "That's strange," she said, still smiling. "It wouldn't start before." "Probably just the cold," I said, backing up. My instincts were screaming now. "Anyway, you're all set. Shouldn't charge you for this." "But I need a ride," she insisted. "Please, I can't stay here anymore." "Your car's running fine," I said. "You can drive yourself." Her smile finally faded. "I can't drive. Not anymore. I haven't been able to drive for a very long time." The wind died suddenly. Completely. The world went silent except for the idle of her engine and my truck. In that silence, I heard something from inside her car. A voice, a man's voice. "Help us, please. She won't let us leave." I looked past her into the Civic. There were people in the back seat. 3 of them. A man in a business suit, an elderly woman in a nightgown, a teenage girl in pajamas. They sat perfectly still, their faces pressed against the windows, their breath fogging the glass. Their eyes were wide, terrified, and fixed on me. "Who the hell are they?" I demanded. The woman in the red jacket turned to look at them, then back at me. "They stopped to help me, just like you did, but they looked, they saw, and now they're mine." I ran, pure survival instinct. I turned and sprinted back to my truck, my boots slipping on the icy shoulder. Behind me, I heard her voice, calm and patient. "You can't leave. You already saw them. That means you're part of this now." I threw myself into my truck, locked the doors, threw it in gear. But when I looked in my mirrors, her car was gone. The shoulder was empty, like it had never been there at all. My radio crackled. Tyler's voice. "Jake? You there? Jake, respond." I grabbed the mic with shaking hands. "Tyler, I'm here. That woman on 44. Did you get her name?" Silence. Then, "What woman?" "The one who called in. The stranded Honda." "Jake, nobody called in. You radioed saying you were checking out a possible disabled vehicle you spotted. There was no call." My blood went cold. "Tyler, I swear to God—" "Jake, you okay? You sound freaked out." I looked at my clipboard. The top sheet, where I should have written down her information, was blank. But underneath, someone had written something in handwriting that wasn't mine. Jessica Parsons. Died, Feb 14, 2008. Highway 44, mile marker 47, Valentine's Day, 12 years ago. I Googled it when I got home. Jessica Parsons, age 29, froze to death on the shoulder of Highway 44 after her car broke down. She'd tried to flag down help, but it was 2 a.m. and no one stopped. They found her 3 days later, frozen solid, her arms still raised in the air like she was waving. I stopped doing night calls after that, sold the business 6 months later, moved to Denver. But every February around Valentine's Day, my phone rings around 2:15 a.m. I never answer it. But one time I did check the number. It came from a phone booth that was torn down in 2007. So if you're driving Highway 44 late at night and you see a woman in a red jacket waving for help, keep driving. Don't stop. Don't look at her face. And definitely don't look in her back seat. Because some people died waiting for help that never came, and now they're determined that no one else will pass them by. Even if it means you never leave either. Hit subscribe to Untold Fears, because the roads we travel have memories, and not all of them want you to arrive safely. 50 miles south, a trucker saw something that defied every law of physics and reason. Story 4. Truck with no driver spotted. Name's Carl Hendricks. No relation to the guy in that trooper's story, far as I know. I've been hauling freight for 32 years, and I've seen some things that'd make your hair go white. Lot lizards with knives, meth heads jumping in front of moving trucks, accidents so bad the highway looked like an abattoir. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what I saw on I-80 through Nebraska. This was back in July of 2018. I was hauling electronics from Sacramento to Chicago, running behind schedule because of some bullshit with the loading dock. It was about 3:30 in the morning, and I was pushing through the dead zone between Grand Island and Lincoln. Flatland, straight highway, nothing but cornfields on both sides, stretching to infinity. I'd been fighting sleep for the past hour. Already had 2 energy drinks and a handful of caffeine pills, but my eyelids felt like they had weights attached. The white line was starting to blur, and I was seriously considering pulling over at the next rest stop when I saw the truck ahead of me. Peterbilt 389, white cab, unmarked trailer, running dark. No lights at all except the required clearance markers. It was doing maybe 45 in the right lane, slow enough that I had to move left to pass. I pulled alongside it, and that's when I noticed the driver's window was down. Strange at highway speed. Even stranger was what I didn't see. A driver? The cab was empty, not dark. My headlights lit it up clear as day. Empty. No one at the wheel. No one in the passenger seat. The steering wheel turning slightly back and forth on its own, making those micro corrections needed to keep a big rig tracking straight. I slowed down, letting it pull ahead. Had to be a trick of the light, right? Reflection on the window making it look empty? But no, I could see clear through to the passenger side door. No driver. Just an empty seat and a truck driving itself down I-80 at 45 miles per hour. My CB crackled. Breaker, breaker, you in the red Freightliner, you seeing what I'm seeing? I grabbed the mic. You seeing the ghost truck? 10-4, been following it for 12 miles now. Tried to pull up next to it. Damn near ran me off the road. Thing won't let you pass. I looked ahead. The white Peterbilt was drifting slightly toward the center line, then back, like it was warning me. What's your 20? I asked. Mile marker 383, eastbound. You? I checked. Same. You want to try calling it in? Already did. State boys think I'm drunk. Told me to pull over and sleep it off. I accelerated, determined to pass this thing and get the hell away from it. As I pulled alongside again, the truck swerved hard left, nearly sideswiping my trailer. I hit my brakes, horn blaring. The Peterbilt straightened out and continued on like nothing happened. Son of a bitch, I yelled into the CB. It just tried to kill me. Told you, thing's got a mind of its own. I tried again, slower this time. Same result. The truck would drift toward me whenever I got close, forcing me back. Then things got worse. The white Peterbilt's brake lights flashed 3 times, a signal, and in my headlights I saw the back doors of its trailer swing open. Inside was darkness. Not the darkness of an empty trailer. This was something deeper, more absolute, like looking into a cave that went down forever. And in that darkness I saw faces. Dozens of them, pale and distorted, their mouths open in silent screams. "Holy shit," the other driver said over the CB. "You seeing that?" "Yeah," I whispered. One of the faces pressed forward, emerging slightly from the darkness. It was a woman, middle-aged, her eyes wide and pleading. She reached out toward me, her arms stretching impossibly long, fingers grasping at the air between our trucks. Then the doors slammed shut. The white Peterbilt suddenly accelerated, pulling away from us. I watched its taillights disappear into the darkness ahead, moving faster than any truck should be able to move. "What the fuck was that?" the other driver asked. "I don't know, man. I don't know." We drove in silence for a few minutes, both processing what we'd seen. Then my headlights caught something on the shoulder ahead. A truck. A white Peterbilt 389 overturned in the ditch, its cab crushed, its trailer split open like a gutted fish. I slowed down. The other driver pulled up beside me. "That's it," he said. "That's the same truck." But it couldn't be. This truck had been here for weeks, maybe months. Rust on the exposed metal, plants growing up through the cab, official state DOT tags marking it as an accident scene pending investigation. I pulled over and got out, the other driver doing the same. We approached the wreck together, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The driver's side door was open. Inside, still belted in, was a skeleton, picked clean by scavengers, bleached by sun and weather. On the visor, clipped in place, was a photo ID tag. I read the name, Michael Parsons, age 52, certified commercial driver. Parsons, same last name as that woman who froze on Highway 44. My companion driver, a older black guy named Dwayne, looked at the trailer. The back doors hung open, bent and twisted. Whatever cargo it had carried was long gone. "How old you think this is?" Dwayne asked. I pointed to a date spray-painted on the side by the dot, 02/14/2008. Valentine's Day. Same day that woman died in South Dakota. We walked back to our trucks without another word. What was there to say? We'd been passed by a truck that crashed 10 years ago. We'd seen the faces of the dead in its trailer. We'd been warned away by something that shouldn't exist. I called in sick the next day. Took a week off. When I came back, I looked up the accident report. Michael Parsons, hauling commercial freight from Sacramento to Chicago, lost control of his vehicle on I-80 near Lincoln, Nebraska. Cause of accident, undetermined. Vehicle left the roadway at high speed and overturned. Driver found dead at the scene. Cargo, missing. Trailer empty when first responders arrived, though shipping manifests showed it should have been loaded. Here's the part that keeps me up at night. 12 other trucks had reported seeing a white Peterbilt driving erratically in the hours before the accident. One driver tried to pass it and was forced off the road. Another reported seeing faces in the trailer when the doors opened. All of those sightings were dismissed as fatigue-related hallucinations. But they weren't hallucinations. That truck is still out there, still driving I-80, still trying to deliver its cargo of souls to whatever destination awaits them. I don't run that route anymore. I pay the extra fuel costs to go around, take I-70 instead. And when I hear stories on the CB about the ghost truck, about drivers who tried to pass it and disappeared, about faces in the darkness, I don't say a word. Because some things, once you see them, you can't unsee. And some roads, once they claim you, never let you go. Subscribe to Untold Fears for stories that'll make you check your mirrors twice. Back on Highway 287, a patrol officer's radio began receiving transmissions from somewhere beyond our world. Story 5. Patrol car radio haunted Deputy Thomas Grant, Larimer County Sheriff's Office, Colorado. 23 years on the job, and I'd seen my share of weird. Mountain people who'd gone feral, tourists who wandered off trail and were never found, drug labs hidden in caves that collapsed on their operators. But I always had explanations, always had rational answers. Until September 22, 2019, when my patrol car radio started picking up the dead. I was working the midnight shift on Highway 14, the stretch that winds through Poudre Canyon. Beautiful during the day, the river runs alongside the road, pine forests covering the mountains, eagles circling overhead. At night, it's something else. The darkness is total. The trees block out the stars, and the river sounds like whispers. Around 1:45 a.m., I got a call about a possible disabled vehicle near mile marker 98. I headed up the canyon, my headlights barely cutting through the fog that rolled down from the peaks. The temperature had dropped to near freezing, unusual for September, and my windshield kept fogging up despite the defroster running full blast. The radio had been quiet all night. Dispatch only called when necessary. But as I drove deeper into the canyon, I started hearing something under the normal chatter. Static that pulsed in rhythm, like breathing. And underneath that, faint voices. I adjusted the squelch, thinking it was interference from the mountains. But the voices got louder. "Please, anyone, we're trapped." I keyed my mic. "Dispatch, you reading this?" No response. Just more static, more voices. "Help us? Can't get out. It's so cold." I turned up the volume. The voices became clearer, overlapping, desperate. "It's been hours. Nobody's coming. Why isn't anyone coming? Mom? Mom, can you hear me? I'm scared." "Oh, God, I can see it. It's coming back. Please, somebody." My skin crawled. These weren't radio transmissions. Radio voices sound compressed, electronic. These sounded like they were in the car with me, whispering directly in my ear. I reached mile marker 98. No vehicle, no disabled car. Just empty road and darkness and that damn fog rolling across my hood. I stopped anyway, putting the car in park, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. The voices continued. "Deputy Grant, can you hear us?" They knew my name. How the hell did they know my name? "Who is this?" I demanded, keying the mic. "Identify yourself." Laughter. Multiple voices, laughing in unison. Not cruel laughter. Worse. The laughter of people who've gone insane, who've been alone in the dark too long and forgotten what sanity sounds like. Then a single voice, female, young. "We're the ones who didn't make it. The ones who crashed, who slid off the road into the river, who froze, who starved. We're still here, Deputy Grant. We're still waiting for help." I looked at the canyon around me. How many accidents had happened on this road? How many people had gone into that freezing river and never climbed out? How many had crashed in winter and frozen before help arrived? Too many. Way too many. "You can't help us," the voice continued. "We're past help, but we want you to know we're here. We've always been here, watching, waiting, hoping that maybe this time someone will see us." The fog outside thickened. In it, I saw shapes, human shapes, standing along the shoulder, their forms barely visible. They didn't move, just stood there, facing the road, like they were still waiting for rescue. More voices joined in, a chorus now. "We waited so long. Nobody came. It got so cold. The water was so dark. I called and called, but nobody answered." My hands shook on the wheel. I wanted to drive away, but something kept me there. Maybe it was guilt. How many calls had I taken where I arrived too late? How many bodies had I pulled from wreckage or water, knowing that if I'd been 5 minutes faster, 10 minutes faster, they might have lived? The radio squawked. My dispatcher's voice cut through the chorus of the dead. Unit 12, respond to your location. I grabbed the mic. Unit 12, I'm at mile marker 98. No vehicle found. But dispatch, my radio's been picking up something weird. Unit 12, we need you to check your dash cam. My dash cam? Why? Just check it. Now. I pulled up the dash cam feed on my laptop. It showed the road ahead, the fog, my headlights, and standing directly in front of my car, close enough that I should have seen them with my own eyes, were 3 figures. A woman in a business suit, her face blue from drowning. A man in hiking gear, his arm bent at an impossible angle. A child in a winter coat, their face so pale they looked like snow. They stared at the camera, through the camera, at me. The woman's mouth moved, and her voice came through my radio. We see you too, Deputy Grant, and now that you've seen us, we'll always see you. I threw the car in reverse, backing up fast, my tires spinning on the wet asphalt. The figures didn't move. They just watched as I fled. I drove straight back to the station, filed my report, requested a transfer to day shift. They granted it without question. Apparently, several other deputies had reported similar experiences on Highway 14, always at night, always near mile marker 98. But the voices didn't stop. I still hear them sometimes on my home radio, my car stereo, even my phone. Faint whispers underneath normal sounds. The dead of Poudre Canyon, still calling for help that will never come, still waiting for rescue that arrived too late. I retired last year, moved to Arizona, far from any mountain roads, far from any rivers where people could drown and be forgotten. But even here, on quiet nights when the house is still, I hear them. Deputy Grant, we're still waiting. Please, someone, anyone. I can't help them. I don't think anyone can. They're caught between worlds, trapped in the moment of their deaths, replaying their final desperate calls forever. So if you're ever driving Highway 14 through Poudre Canyon at night and your radio picks up strange voices, don't respond. Don't engage. And whatever you do, don't stop at mile marker 98, because some calls for help can't be answered, and some of the dead refuse to accept that. If you've got a story you can't explain, subscribe to Untold Fears, where the unexplained is just another night on the job. In Nevada, a paramedic responded to an accident scene where physics had stopped making sense. Story 6. Accident with no victims found. I'm Rachel Kowalski, certified paramedic with the Clark County Fire Department for 9 years. Las Vegas runs 24/7, and the desert around it never sleeps either. I've worked trauma that would break most people: shootings, stabbings, overdoses, crashes where we extracted victims with the jaws of life and garden hoses. I've pronounced death more times than I can count, held pressure on wounds that should have been fatal, and learned to disconnect my emotions because feeling too much would destroy me. But on March 7, 2021, I responded to an accident that didn't follow any rules I understood. The call came in at 3:17 a.m., MVA with injuries, Highway 95 northbound, approximately 20 miles south of Beatty. Single vehicle, multiple passengers, possible fatalities. A passing trucker had called it in. My partner drove. I was working with Chris Santos that night. Good guy, 5 years on the job, reliable in a crisis. We had the lights and sirens going, but at that hour, the highway was ours. The desert stretched, out black and endless on both sides, dotted with scrub brush and the occasional Joshua tree. The stars were so bright they looked artificial. You ever been out this way? Chris asked. Few times, I said, checking our supplies. Remote as hell. If they're critical, we'll be life-flighting to Vegas. If they're still alive, Chris muttered. We found the scene exactly where dispatch said, mile marker 147. A silver Jeep Cherokee had left the road, rolled several times, and come to rest on its roof about 30 yards into the desert. The doors had been ripped off by the impacts. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks. The whole vehicle was crumpled like a beer can. Nobody should have walked away from this. The trucker who'd called it in was still there, a heavy-set guy in a Peterbilt cap. He looked shaken. They were all screaming, he told us as we approached. I heard them from the road, 5, maybe 6 people, screaming for help, but by the time I parked and ran over, he shook his head. Nobody there. You check inside the vehicle? I asked, already moving toward it with my jump bag. Looked through the windows. Couldn't see anybody. Chris and I split up, approaching from different angles with our flashlights. The Jeep's metal was still warm, the engine ticking as it cooled. Fresh oil pooled underneath. The radio was still on, playing static. I reached the driver's side first. The door had been torn completely off, leaving a gaping opening. I shone my light inside. Empty. No driver. No passengers. The seats were intact but unoccupied. No blood on the airbags, which had deployed. No blood anywhere, actually, which was impossible given the violence of the crash. "Chris?" I called out. "Yeah, I got nothing," he responded from the passenger side. "No bodies, no blood, no personal effects, nothing." I backed up, studying the scene. The track showed clearly where the Jeep had left the road. You could see the point where the driver lost control, the skid marks, the trajectory of the roll. And around the wreckage, clear as day, were footprints. Lots of footprints, leading away from the vehicle in all directions. 5 distinct sets, maybe 6, heading off into the desert. "They walked away," Chris said, joining me. "Unbelievable! That crash should have killed everyone inside." "They couldn't have gone far," I said. "If they're injured, they're probably wandering, disoriented. We need to search." We split up again, following different sets of tracks. Mine led north, deeper into the desert. The prints were erratic, stumbling, weaving, like someone severely concussed. I called out as I walked. "Hello, this is the fire department. If you can hear me, call out. We're here to help." Nothing. Just wind and the distant sound of trucks on the highway. The footprints led me to a small rise. I climbed it, my flashlight beam sweeping back and forth. At the top, the prints simply stopped. Not faded away, not turned around. Just stopped, like whoever made them had been lifted into the air. "Rachel!" Chris's voice, distant and urgent. "Get back here!" I ran back to the crash site. Chris was standing by the Jeep, his flashlight aimed inside, his face pale. "What?" I asked. "Look at the odometer." I did. It read 137,492 miles. But there was something else, a sticker on the corner of the windshield. "Vehicle registration." I read the date. The registration had expired in 2003, 18 years ago. "That's not right," I said. "This is a newer model Jeep. Can't be from 2003. Chris pulled out his phone and ran the license plate. It came back to a 1998 Jeep Cherokee, silver, registered to the Henderson family, Matthew and Julia Henderson, along with their 3 children. The vehicle had been reported destroyed in a fatal accident on Highway 95 in March of 2003. All 5 occupants killed instantly. "We're at the scene of an 18-year-old accident," I whispered. The radio in the Jeep suddenly came to life. Not static anymore. Voices. A family talking over each other. "Are we almost there?" "I think we made good time." "Can we stop for food?" "Just a couple more hours, kids." Happy voices. A family on a road trip, excited about their destination. Then screeching tires. Screaming. The sound of metal tearing and glass breaking and human bodies hitting surfaces they weren't meant to hit. Then silence. Then, faint and distant, the same voices from before. "Please, someone help us." "I'm hurt. I'm really hurt." "Where's Mom? Mom, where are you?" "We need help. Please, someone must have seen us." Chris backed away from the vehicle. "We need to leave. Now." But I couldn't move. I was thinking about the trucker's statement. He'd heard them screaming, and the footprints were fresh. This wasn't just a recording or a memory. Something was replaying this accident over and over. The Henderson family dying again and again, waiting for help that came too late once and would always come too late. More voices joined the chorus, and I realized they weren't coming from the radio anymore. They were coming from the desert itself, from the darkness, from the places where the footprints ended. Help us. We're lost. It's so dark. Why won't you help us? Shapes moved in the darkness beyond my flashlight beam. Human-shaped but wrong somehow, their proportions off, their movements jerky like stop-motion animation. "Rachel," Chris said, his voice tight, "we're leaving, right now." We ran back to the ambulance. The trucker was already gone. His truck disappeared down the highway. Smart man. We got in, Chris hit the gas, and we didn't stop until we reached the lights of Beatty. Neither of us said a word during the drive. What was there to say? We filed our report, no victims found, no evidence of recent occupation, possible prank. Call. The department wasn't happy, but they couldn't argue with our documentation. But I went back to the records, looked up the Henderson accident. 5 people killed instantly on Highway 95, 20 miles south of Beatty, at mile marker 147. Emergency responders arrived within 30 minutes of the accident being called in. But in those 30 minutes, the family had died screaming for help that was coming, just not fast enough. And apparently, they're still screaming, still dying, still waiting. I drive that route sometimes during the day. I've never stopped at mile marker 147, but I've slowed down as I pass. And every time I see it, fresh skid marks leaving the road, fresh damage to the desert scrub. Like the accident just happened, like it's still happening, like it will always be happening. So if you're ever driving Highway 95 south of Beatty, late at night, and you see a silver Jeep Cherokee on its roof in the desert, don't stop. Don't investigate. Don't try to help. Because the people you'll find there died 18 years ago. And they don't want your help anymore. They want you to join them. Subscribe to Untold Fears, where emergency responders share the calls that never made it into official reports. On Route 50, the loneliest road in America, a cross-country traveler heard screams that echoed from nowhere. Story 7. Screams on Empty Road. My name's Lauren Vega, and I'm a travel blogger. I specialize in off-the-beaten-path destinations, abandoned places, roads less traveled. It's a lonely life. I've been on the road for 4 years, living out of my Toyota 4Runner, sleeping in Walmart parking lots and BLM land, chasing stories nobody else wants to tell. After my father died and left me his life insurance money, I realized I didn't want the house or the job or the life everyone expected. I wanted to be alone. I wanted to be free. Be careful what you wish for. This happened in August of 2022 on Highway 50 through Nevada. They call it the loneliest road in America, and they're not kidding. You can drive for an hour without seeing another car. No towns, no services, no cell signal, just scrub desert and distant mountains, and a road that goes straight forever. I was heading east from Ely to Delta, Utah. It was about 11:30 p.m., and I'd been driving since dawn. I should have stopped at a motel in Ely, but I was running low on cash and figured I could make it to Delta before I got too tired. The road was empty. My headlights barely seemed to touch the darkness. The radio had lost all stations 50 miles back, so I was driving in silence except for the hum of my engine and the occasional rattle from my camping gear in the back. That's when I heard the scream. It came from my right side, the passenger side, cutting through the night like a knife. A woman's scream, high and desperate and terrified. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, then cut off abruptly. I slammed on my brakes, my 4Runner skidding to a stop in the middle of the empty highway. My heart hammered against my ribs. I sat there, engine idling, staring into the darkness. Nothing, no houses, no cars, no lights, just desert. I must have imagined it. I'd been driving for 16 hours, running on coffee and gas station jerky. Auditory hallucinations weren't uncommon for long-haul drivers. I took a deep breath and started driving again. 5 minutes later, another scream, this time from the left side. A man's voice, shouting words I couldn't make out, desperate and panicked. Then silence. I pulled over again, this time getting out of my car with my phone flashlight. The desert air was cool, smelling of sage and dust. The stars were brilliant, unfamiliar constellations, sharp against the black. "Hello?" I called out. "Is someone there? Do you need help?" My voice disappeared into the vastness. No echo, no response. I got back in the car, locked the doors, and continued driving. But now I kept my windows down, listening. The screams came every few minutes after that. Men, women, children. Sometimes one at a time, sometimes overlapping. They came from different directions, left, right, behind me, sometimes seeming to come from directly above. Always desperate, always terrified, always cut off mid-cry. I tried recording them on my phone. The audio playback showed nothing but road noise and engine hum. I tried my radio, scanning through all bands. Static mostly, but on one frequency, I heard something. A voice, distant and broken. "Anyone on Highway 50, please respond. There's been an accident. We need help?" I grabbed my CB radio, I carry one for emergencies, and responded. "This is Lauren Vega, eastbound on 50. What's your location?" "Mile marker 38. "Oh God, it's bad. There's so many of them. They're not moving." I checked the mile marker signs. I was at mile marker 45, 7 miles away. I accelerated, pushing the 4Runner to 80. The screams got louder, more frequent, coming from all around me now. The darkness pressed against my windows like something physical. I reached mile marker 38. Empty road, no accident, no vehicles, no people. But in my headlights, I saw them, standing along both sides of the highway. Dozens of them, hundreds, men, women, children, elderly. They stood perfectly still, facing the road, their mouths open in silent screams. They wore clothes from different eras, a woman in a 50s dress, a man in bell-bottoms and a tie-dye shirt, a child in modern clothes, all standing there, all screaming without sound. I stopped the car. I don't know why. Every instinct told me to keep driving, to get the hell away. But I stopped. One of them, a young man in a military uniform from Mobile 1, stepped forward. He walked to my driver's side window and looked at me. His mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear. I rolled down my window slightly. "I can't hear you," I said. He kept talking, his expression desperate, pleading. And slowly, like turning up the volume on a radio, his voice came through. "Not your fault. Couldn't have known. Couldn't have stopped. But please, please remember us." "Remember who?" I asked. "What happened here?" "All of us," he said, gesturing to the others. "Highway 50, the loneliest road. We're the ones who died here. Accidents, heart attacks, suicides, murders. We're the ones who died alone on this road, and nobody remembered. Nobody mourned. We're just statistics, numbers on a report." More of them approached my car now, surrounding it, their faces pressed against the windows. Not threatening, pleading, begging to be seen, to be acknowledged. "How many?" I whispered. "Hundreds," the soldier said. "Since this road opened in the 30s, maybe thousands. We all died alone. And now we're still here, still alone, still hoping someone will stop. Someone will see us. Someone will remember." The screams filled my ears again, but now I understood. They weren't screaming from pain. They were screaming because they were invisible, forgotten, lost to history. They were screaming because they were alone. "I see you," I said, tears running down my face. "I see all of you." The soldier smiled sadly. "Thank you. But seeing isn't enough. You have to tell our stories. You have to make people remember that this road, this lonely road, is paved with the dead, that every mile marker is a grave, that the loneliness we felt in death is worse than the loneliness we felt in life. The figures began to fade, their forms becoming transparent, their voices growing distant. The soldier was the last to go. "Tell them," he said. "Tell them we were here. Tell them not to die alone." Then he was gone, and I was alone on an empty highway in the middle of the Nevada desert, surrounded by nothing but darkness and silence. I drove to Delta in a daze, checked into a motel, researched Highway 50. The statistics were staggering. Hundreds of fatalities over the decades, single-car accidents, people who pulled over and never started driving again, hitchhikers who were never picked up and died of exposure, motorists whose cars broke down and who tried to walk for help in 115-degree heat. So many people, so many deaths, all alone, all forgotten. I made it my mission to document them. Every victim I could find a record of I wrote about. I took their photos, when available, and posted them online. I told their stories. I made sure they weren't just numbers, but I still hear them sometimes, late at night when I'm driving empty roads. The screams of the forgotten dead. And I know that no matter how many stories I tell, I can't save them all. So if you drive Highway 50 through Nevada and you hear screaming in the darkness, don't dismiss it as the wind. Don't ignore it as imagination. Stop. Listen. Remember. Because the dead don't want much. They just want to be seen, to be remembered, to know that their lonely deaths meant something to someone, even if that someone is just a stranger passing through in the night. Subscribe to Untold Fears if these stories remind you that every road has ghosts and every ghost has a story. And finally, on a stretch of Interstate 70 through Kansas, a man learned that sometimes the thing chasing you isn't trying to catch you, it's trying to warn you. Story 8. Man reports shadow chasing car. Brad Williamson here. I'm a pharmaceutical sales rep, which means I spend my life driving from clinic to clinic, hospital to hospital, peddling pills and playing golf with doctors who barely remember my name. Divorced twice, estranged from my kids, living in extended stay hotels, and eating fast food 3 meals a day. I know what I am, a failure with a company car. But I'm good at not thinking about it. Until June 15th, 2023, when something forced me to think about everything. I was driving east on I-70 through Kansas, heading from Denver to Kansas City. I'd left late, around 10 p.m., after a dinner meeting ran long. My plan was to drive through the night, arrive by dawn, catch a few hours of sleep at the hotel, then hit my appointments. I was somewhere between Colby and Oakley, about 30 miles of nothing in every direction. Flat grassland, empty highway, no moon. My cruise control was set at 75, classic rock on the radio, a thermos of truck stop coffee in the cup holder. That's when I saw it in my rearview mirror. A shadow, not a car, a shadow. It was darker than the night around it, a solid mass of black that moved independently, flowing across the highway behind me like liquid smoke. I blinked, thinking it was fatigue, but it didn't go away. It got closer. The shadow had no lights, made no sound that I could hear over my engine and the radio. But it was moving fast, faster than any vehicle should move. It closed the distance between us in seconds until it was maybe 50 yards behind me. I accelerated, 80 miles per hour, 90. The shadow kept pace. My hands gripped the wheel so tight, my knuckles went white. The radio began to crackle, the music distorting, voices cutting in and out. Turn around. Go back. Don't go to Kansas City. Accident ahead, you won't survive. Turn around while you still can. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but it was dead, completely drained despite being at 83% charge 5 minutes ago. The shadow pulled alongside me in the left lane. I looked over. It wasn't a shadow. It was an absence, a hole in reality shaped like a car. Through it, I could see nothing. Not the landscape on the other side. Not darkness. Just nothing. A void that hurt to look at. And in that void, I saw my reflection. But it wasn't me driving. It was me slumped over the wheel, my head at an unnatural angle, blood running from my nose and ears. It was me dead. I screamed and swerved right, nearly losing control. The shadow thing stayed in the left lane, pacing me. More voices on the radio. Accident at mile marker 76. Multiple fatalities. Medical helicopter en route. Brad Williamson, age 47, pronounced dead at scene. That was my name, my age. The shadow pulled ahead of me, then moved right, blocking my lane. I had to brake hard to avoid hitting it. It slowed down, forcing me to slow down. 60 miles per hour, 50, 40, and then I saw why. Ahead, at mile marker 76, the road was gone. Not under construction, gone. A massive sinkhole had opened up, swallowing both lanes, creating a pit maybe 50 feet across, and God knows how deep. There were no warning signs, no barriers, no lights, just sudden void. If I'd been going 75, I would have hit it at full speed. I would have died instantly. The shadow stopped at the edge of the pit. I stopped behind it, my hands shaking, my heart trying to punch its way out of my chest. The shadow began to dissipate, breaking apart like smoke in wind. And as it faded, I heard a final voice on my radio. A young woman's voice, sad and distant. "I died here," she said. 6 months ago. The sinkhole opened with no warning. I didn't have time to stop, but maybe I could save someone else. Maybe I could stop being useless. Even if I'm dead, maybe I could matter. The shadow was gone. My radio went back to playing classic rock. My phone came back to life. I sat there for 10 minutes, just breathing. Then I called 911 and reported the sinkhole. They said they'd send a crew. They thanked me for calling it in before someone got hurt. I looked up the accident. Angela Ramirez, aged 28, died on I-70 near Oakley, Kansas, on December 18, 2022. Single-car accident. Vehicle entered a sinkhole that opened suddenly during winter flooding. No witnesses. Body recovered 3 days later. She died alone. She died because no one warned her. And in death, she'd appointed herself the guardian of that spot, trying to save others from her fate. I stopped the car and got out, walked to the edge of the pit. In my hands, I held a photo I'd downloaded of Angela, smiling, pretty, with her whole life ahead of her. "Thank you," I said to the empty darkness. "You mattered. You saved me. And I'll make sure people know about you." I posted about her online, shared her story, made sure people knew that mile marker 76 on I-70 was dangerous, that Angela Ramirez had died there, and that she'd become something more than a victim. She'd become a protector. I don't know if she heard me. I don't know if the dead can hear the living. But I like to think that maybe in saving me, she found some peace, some purpose. I drive that route sometimes, always in daylight now. I always slow down at mile marker 76. The sinkhole's been filled in, the road repaired. But I still see her sometimes, just a flicker in my peripheral. Vision, a shadow that moves against the wind. And I always say, thank you. Because Angela Ramirez, age 28, who died alone and afraid in a hole in the earth, became the angel who saved my life. And maybe that's what all of these stories are about. Not horror, not supernatural terror, but the lonely dead trying desperately to connect with the living, to matter, to be remembered, to save us from the fates they couldn't escape. So the next time you're driving late at night on an empty highway and you see something that shouldn't be there, don't assume it's trying to hurt you. Maybe it's trying to help. Maybe it's trying to warn you. Maybe it's just trying to be remembered. Subscribe to Untold Fears, because the roads we travel are haunted not by evil, but by the lonely dead who refuse to let their deaths be meaningless. These 8 accounts were collected from emergency responders, drivers, and travelers across America. Names have been kept as provided, locations verified where possible. What they experienced on those lonely highways can't be fully explained, but it can be remembered, and maybe that's all the dead want. To be remembered? Drive safe. Stay alert. And if you see something impossible on the road ahead, don't look away. It might be trying to save your life.